It's Game Boy World, and this is Bionic Battler. Last episode, we saw a super obscure Game Boy release that turned out to be a delightful charmer begging to be unearthed and shared. This week, it's the other kind of super obscure Game Boy release, the kind that's not fun and makes you regret that Nintendo ever created the Game Boy. Yes, it's our second janky Why Did They Do That creation by Copia Systems, the developer behind bizarro top-down racer Dead Heat Scramble. The developer whose MO appears to be that of a mad scientist, so caught up in what they could do they never stop to ask if they should. It's also our second game based around mech combat in first-person mazes, which is shaping up to be a surprisingly popular concept for a console that can barely handle basic 2D sprites and side-scrolling at a decent frame rate. Unfortunately, Bionic Battler lacks the quality and ambition that Atlas and Asuka invested into the flawed gem that was COSMO. Where that game could lean on its multi-format playstyle and creative shooter RPG hybrid designed to compensate for its rather middling first-person sequences, Bionic Battler has nothing to offer besides said middling first-person sequences. The game consists entirely of stomping around a maze in a robot suit, trying to defeat other people in robot suits. There's very little to this game. The difficulty levels offer an increasing number of robots for you to defeat on a single life, and you can choose a few different musical styles to play in the background while you march around in search of violence, but that's about it. Your robot throws punches and has a limited number of missiles you can fire. Punches, of course, require you to stand adjacent to a bad guy in order to deliver damage, which makes you equally vulnerable. Melee weapons and first-person action tend not to go together very well, as anyone who has ever played an FPS knows. It's all well and good for beating up helpless pigs and mineral resources in Minecraft, but throw danger into the mix and it becomes much less amusing. There's a reason Half-Life contrives reasons to force you to use the crowbar after all. You wouldn't rely on it at all if you had ranged weapons to depend on. Bionic Battler does provide you with a ranged weapon, a missile, but it has to be charged up to travel any further than your fist, and it moves slowly enough that enemies can avoid it fairly easily. Otherwise, though, you have to rely on your clumsy melee attack, which means you have to move in close to an enemy, then rely on the clumsy and sluggish controls to duck back quickly enough to not take retaliatory damage. The game provides you with an overview of each level, though the heads-up display is so cumbersome as to be almost more trouble than it's worth. You have to manage your power level, your shield status, an enemy proximity meter that works like Etrian Odyssey's FOE detector, keep an eye on your missile charge status, and watch the radar map for other combatants. Further adding to the complication is that you're not alone with the bad guys in the maze. While you're stomping around, so are your AI-controlled teammates. But there's no tagging system in place, and other combatants tend to show up identically on the map overview. In my experience, comrade fighters tend not to be of much value. You'll get a "lost" message whenever they die, but they rarely take down bad guys themselves. If you're lucky, they might whittle down your foe's shields before dying. Because this is Game Boy, you shouldn't expect much in the way of graphical performance. The game moves at a somewhat decent clip, but this is no FACEBALL 2000. The maze ratchets through cardinal views and grid-based steps without a sense of scrolling or rotation. Even COSMO did better than this. But FACEBALL 2000 is definitely the comparison at hand here. Like that seminal PC shooter, the idea behind Bionic Battler was to present players with a multiplayer maze combat experience. It's an arena action game consisting of standalone matches, and while you can certainly stick to the single-player mode, it offers no real sense of satisfaction. If you do somehow manage to win a match, you get to shake your commandant's hand and, well, that's it. There's no progression here, no sense of a larger quest, just standalone arena matches against an ever greater number of foes. It's really meant to be a head-to-head two-player competition. And that would be reasonably interesting, I suppose, if not for the aforementioned FACEBALL 2000. See, while Bionic Battler debuted in Japan in August 1990 as Versus Battler, it wouldn't make its way west until the end of 1992. By that point, FACEBALL 2000 had been available in the US for nearly a year. FACEBALL 2000 with its comparatively smooth-scrolling mazes. FACEBALL 2000 with its ability to move and fire in non-cardinal directions. FACEBALL 2000 with its 4-player head-to-head action. By comparison, Bionic Battler feels amateurish and clumsy. About the only thing it has going for it is its ridiculous music, all of which sounds pretty good but feels weird and inappropriate for a robot maze combat arena game. The title screen introduces this futuristic sport with 50s style sock hop ragtime. And during combat you can choose from 3 different musical themes: country and western, Japan, and so-called disco. The great news is that you can find several YouTube playlists that will allow you to enjoy the best part of Bionic Battler, its soundtrack, for free. Otherwise, the game just isn't worth messing with. It may have been mildly interesting at the time of its Japanese debut, but by the time it reached the US, it had already been massively outclassed by FACEBALL 2000, and there's literally no reason to go back and experience or explore this game. I can't even begin to guess what inspired Electrobrain to pick it up for American release. So ultimately, Bionic Battler is like an onion. No, it's not multi-layered and complex. I mean, it makes you cry when you open it up, and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Next time on Game Boy World, the blessed mercy of returning to a generic portable puzzler.